Hello, it is April 9th, 2022. This is As the World Burns. I'm your host, Randall Burns. Today's topic is safety and MicroEVs with emphasis on the Arcimoto MLM, which has been recently introduced. Now, nothing in this video is to be construed as financial advice. I am not a financial professional. I do have experience working in the financial industry as a tech worker. If you want financial advice, I suggest you consult a licensed financial professional or someone with the appropriate certifications. I will be talking about some technical issues in which I do have professional experience. I have no connection to Arcimoto other than as a shareholder, an options holder, someone who put down a $100 deposit on an MLM, and I've occasionally had my tweets responded to by the Arcimoto CEO. Now, a quote from a National Geographic article. Some 70% of people surveyed in the 50 biggest metro regions of the United States say that they are interested in biking. Why don't they bike more? It comes down to safety. About half of the people surveyed said they were understandably too afraid to bike on the street. Now, this is a real issue, and I'll document it further into the video how big of an issue it is. But it is also not an issue that is growing, and it is also not an issue that's the same in all geographical areas and all conditions. Now, the first, an overview. Bike class vehicles are growing considerably faster in sales globally than automobile class vehicles. See the chart. The link to it is in the description. This has not yet been expressed politically, even except in a few highly democratic countries like the Netherlands. More oligarchical nations are lagging behind on this issue. But eventually it's going to become just too compelling to ignore. You're already seeing actions in places like Colombia, for example. They're not a terribly democratic country, but they've come to realize that their political leaders have come to realize they actually do have to act on this area. One important thing to grasp up front is that non-fatal bike accidents far outnumber fatal bike accidents, and they're actually fairly common. There is a move towards bike lanes to lessen the accidents in some countries. Overwhelmingly, bike accidents are the fault of ice motorists. The typical profile is someone who's driving an SUV or a pickup and distracted. Another important point is that many of these motorists are not prosecuted for various reasons, even when there is evidence of fault. I mean, the evidence has to be not just sufficient, it has to be overwhelming to get a conviction, at least reliably, and especially in cases of minor injuries. Now, overall car sales in the United States are actually pretty stagnant. And if you factor in the growth of Tesla, ICE cars are going away from American street. I think we're in the early stages of this transition, but if you look at photos of street scenes from the period in which the automobile was first introduced, the change was actually pretty sudden. There were horses and a variety of other vehicles, including bicycles, and then suddenly the automobile came to dominate, and did so suddenly. This is the environment into which the MLM is being introduced as a bicycle which has a wider ability to replace an automobile than many existing bicycle class vehicles. Now, a lot of folks are noticing that there is a upswing in bike sales, particularly e-bike sales, and they're attributing to the pandemic. A lot of ICE execs are telling themselves this is a temporary factor. I would argue it's just bringing a global trend out of the closet in the United States, which is one of the most car-oriented societies in the world. Along with that, we're seeing a trend for bicycles to be used for more serious purposes like commuting to and from work. Now, a lot of cyclists are attempting to handle this issue politically through better bike infrastructure, which basically means bike trails. I think this will happen eventually, but it's going to happen slowly. This is something that simply cannot happen too rapidly. We have some suburbs like Palo Alto, California that have very good bike trails. There are a lot of the real danger zones are the more urbanized areas where bicycles would actually be the most practical theoretically. Now, out of the box, the existing MLM prototype has some real safety advantages. It's a lot more stable. It's a lot better, easier handling. But that only takes you so far within the existing infrastructure. So we're going to explore what more can be done. Now, Mark Frohnmayer, the CEO of Arcimoto, has indicated he wants to sell a premium bike in the first iteration. And that may change later on. They may have a more diverse offering, but that's the plan for the first one. And I was shocked that there were no headlights, turn signals, or mirrors in the first iteration. I know I also would want a horn even louder than you have in a typical car, because I want to be noticed when I get in, when a car is getting out of line. Now, there's a lot of evidence that cameras recording the street scenes can have a lot of safety implications that are positive for automobiles. I don't know of anyone who's done this really well with bicycles yet. Tesla has done it in their cars, and it's actually integrated as part of their full self-driving database collection. But it can be used for a lot of other things on a more limited basis with more limited software right now. Okay, and they have a very extensive event recording database right now. What I think is positively revolutionary, or one of the things, is not only are they using it to train their neural net for full self-driving, but they're using it to establish insurance rates. This means that they can literally give a driver a day-by-day rate and greatly reduce insurance costs for the safest drivers. Like, they can establish pretty clearly, for example, if somebody's an impaired driver, but without a breath test. And this has some real issues of parental supervision, because with something like the FUV, you may have a 12-year-old who's driving 10 or 12 miles away from home in it. There are generally not insurance requirements for bicycle class vehicles, but that doesn't mean that people don't want additional insurance, liability insurance against other bicycles, and especially uninsured motorist coverage and hit and run coverage. Now, Tesla Insurance mission is to insure EVs, and I think that the MLM qualifies in that charter. And I think it's important that we remind these folks of their corporate mission and their role as the 600-pound gorilla of EVs. Now, over 60% of bicycle deaths involve somebody not wearing a helmet. As a parent, this makes me wonder if I would turn my child loose with an MLM without having the vehicle actually require them to wear a helmet. I mean, this might be an optional add-on where the helmet was smart enough to know if the person was wearing it or not while they were riding, and simply wouldn't power up without it. There are airbags now for bikes. Here's an example from a French vendor that's been around for a while. These have not become wildly popular. They're actually quite popular for motorcycle riders. I mean, this might be an option sold by the vendor, because if you place sensors in the bike itself, I think you can solve some of the problems these have been having. They're not great when somebody is thrown from the vehicle, and sensors in the frame could detect that when somebody's been thrown from the bike and inflate automatically. Another feature brought to us from the world of Tesla that's related to full self-driving, but already demonstrated in much lower tech, is the convoy feature. Now, currently, like, the MLM has passenger and cargo capabilities, and I think it's kind of a stretch to do that in a bicycle class vehicle. But the convoy feature may actually be more important for bicycle class vehicles than it is for the... I mean, right now, this is kind of the state of the art of bicycle cargo carrying in the contemporary America. You have a variety of bike trailers. They're typically, 50 to 100 pounds. And sometimes people put panniers on their bikes, but those are kind of a shoehorn fit. This is more common, I think. And you can purchase bike trailers that are meant for hauling much larger loads. They're not real common. They're a little pricey for what they are, but they do exist and people do use them. But I think they right now are really, in fact, limited to the more skilled cyclists. Now, my argument is that little drone on the far right that's depicted as a Platform 2 based vehicle, that could be equipped with convoy mode, and convoy mode could be standard equipment in the MLM class Platform 2. And that gives you a much more seamless transition. It gives you a child carrier for children that are too young to pedal themselves. It could also be used for adults that are, say, cognitive impaired, like Alzheimer's or autism. And this and it could be also used for big payloads like 500 or even 700 pounds of somebody going in to buy a big batch of groceries, for example. That would especially expand the capabilities of, say, a smaller, lighter version of the MLM. It would also mean that, for example, someone with, say, 4 kids that were small would have an option to convoy with them. And this is not to diss the Bikes at Work product. It's a very fine product for what it is. But I think that with modern electronics, we can do a lot better for platform. Now, for cargo drones, you are going to need to move the platform 2 with electric brakes and electric steering. And you're going to have to start collecting the database to train the neural net pretty early on. You're not going to necessarily need to do something nearly sophisticated as level 5 autonomy, but you will need something. But I think that even the existing level 2 autonomy you see in Teslas right now can reduce accidents even more dramatically and more significantly than what you see with the Tesla reduction in automobile accidents. And they have numbers to prove they are reducing accidents in their drivers. And bicyclists have more of a problem, and I think that there's more low-hanging fruit there. Now, from an investment angle, this is what investments analysts call a moat. It means it's a barrier of other people entering the niche that a company occupies. Tesla is training their neural nets for their full self-driving software with much larger databases than any other vendor, including Google, has. I mean, we're talking larger by a couple orders of magnitude. And this is something that has not been appreciated by the financial analyst community. They are clueless on it. I say this as someone that contributed to the HNC development of Falcon, which is their fraud detection system used today in over 70% of all credit card transactions worldwide, which was one of the first successful neural net applications. And the analysts don't grasp how much of the value of Tesla relates to this software capability. My statistics show that it's over 80 to 90%. And I think that's what relates to customer satisfaction, relates to the value of the company. Check out my Evaluating Tesla video series to see my numbers on this. Now, there are some politically powerful partners in the safety quest. One is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They want to get the drunks out of their cars. MLM gives you a place to put them, to relegate serial offenders like the one who's a wealthy businessman who had over 7 violations in his Ferrari, and nobody thought to take his Ferrari away and put him in something a little bit safer. Right now, judges are very hesitant about pulling people's licenses that really ought to be pulled, because doing so is kind of an economic death sentence. But better bicycle class vehicles provides another indifferent option. And I think this won't be lost on Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Another potential set of allies are real estate interests, which have very substantial political clout in many urban areas. And the simple fact is that bike lanes raise property values. Freeways, by the way, do not traditionally. Now, that may be changing with the rise of, and I go into that in my Tesla and real estate video that I'll include a link to in the description. But these are potential allies, and particularly when you consider that the bicycle class vehicles like the MLM can be just ramped up much more quickly. Tesla's going as fast as they can. I think can license its technology and move faster. Now, I think we need to think in terms of how Tesla and Arcimoto, and for that matter, companies like Aptera coexist. I think they all have a niche that's important here, and I think they're actually synergistic products. I do think it's important for Arcimoto to start collecting detailed driving data as soon as possible for a variety. FSD's features, or some subset of them, are going to be especially important for disabled riders, especially the cognitive impaired. And I don't think it has to be level 5 to be useful. I think that just what Tesla has right now brought into bicycle class vehicles could be very useful. And Google is another alternative if Tesla cannot be reasonable about their licensing process. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please press the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Comments are welcome, especially suggestions for future episodes. I have actually made episodes based on viewers' comments and will continue to do so. I try to reply to all thoughtful comments. I'm planning a video on the economics of MLM use. Welcome your comments. Look forward to seeing you soon.